Thanks for joining us for Eye on New Mexico. This week we are getting a glimpse into our state Attorney General's office. As many of you know, this year a new yet familiar face has stepped into the role after winning the election back in November. Take a look at this.
We are ready to call another race in today's primary, and that is in the very contested Attorney General race. Raúl Torrez looking to pull it out now versus Brian Colon. Matt Grubbs joining me. And Matt, we expected this to be really tight, and then just in maybe, I don't know, the last 35, 45 minutes, a big section of votes came in and really just grew that lead for Torrez.
Now, the Attorney General, Raúl Torrez, joins me now in studio. Thank you for stepping in with us today.
Thanks for having me, Spencer. I appreciate it.
So looking back at that shot of calling the election that night on KOB, what do you remember when the race was called?
I was with my family. I was with my wife and our two kids, and it was just a really special moment. You know, a lot of people don't realize that campaigning it's a family affair. You have to do it as a team, and we had a little moment in the parking lot when we knew that we'd pulled it out, and we kind of had a family huddle, and it was a special moment. It was away from, frankly, it was away from you guys. It was away from lots of different folks that had contributed to it, and it was just a moment for us to reflect on it as a family. And it was really special because we got to travel the state and show our kids a lot of things that, you know, they're Albuquerque kids, so they hadn't really seen every corner of the state, and so they really got a feel for things. But it was a really special moment for us all.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah. And so you won the election in November and you stepped into office in January. There was a little rocky road with the transition of power. How was that from your perspective?
Well, I actually benefited from a pretty smooth transition with my predecessor. The prior Attorney General was very helpful in terms of helping us get up to speed. I felt bad for District Attorney Bregman. When he came in, he really didn't have the benefit of the kind of lead-in and the lead time that he had. And so, but we've been trying to work with him to make sure that we can provide any information that he needs as he gets to prepare for, you know, budget presentations and all the things that happen up in Santa Fe. But we're settling in. We're finding an agency that has a lot of extraordinary people, a lot of extraordinary public servants that really are committed to trying to help New Mexicans, and I am sharing with them my vision for the office and things that are going to continue, and some of the areas that we'd like to do differently, and whole new initiatives that we haven't ever really seen before. And there's just been a lot of excitement for it, and so we're hoping to build on that progress and really take this agency into a place where it can have even greater impacts for the lives of people in our state.
So you're getting settled in there, but what helped you getting settled in, especially coming from a district attorney position to now, well, just representing the county of Bernalillo to now representing the entire state as the Attorney General? What skills are kind of transferable from one position to the other there?
Well, to a certain extent, it was somewhat easier in terms of managing this transition. This is my second transition. The district attorney's office is actually, most people don't realize this, is actually bigger than the AG's office. It just has more staff, and it also has a higher volume of cases. And so when I walked into the district attorney's office, there were a number of challenges in terms of just logistics and cases and trying to understand what we had inherited. And so because I had been through that before, I actually was prepared because I'd had that kind of experience. And the other thing is, to a certain extent, and I'm sure my successor in the DA's office will see this, there's a pace and a volume to the DA's office that is probably less predictable. One of the things that I benefit from now as Attorney General is I have the ability to work on longer-term initiatives and things that are complex, but there is, I think, a more reasonable pace in terms of responding to emergencies and things like that. That said, we are really getting to understand the depth and complexity of the challenges that we face. Everything from a water settlement, proposed water settlement with Texas, a lawsuit that we recently filed against several communities on abortion access, fire recovery in northern New Mexico, obviously crime and public safety issues, and new ideas we have for protecting children and vulnerable families. So we have a lot more on our plate in a smaller agency, and I'm excited about the opportunity, and it's just been an extraordinary, I haven't even been there a month, but it's been an extraordinary first few weeks for me.
That's good to hear. But back to your point of the difference of workload between the DA's office and the AG's office. Come to think of it, when you were the DA, we had you here at KOB quite a bit, a little bit more than the former AG, Hector Balderas. He stepped in here every once in a while. But yeah, now that you mentioned that, we saw a lot more of you than the AG. Yeah. So we'll see how much time you have to step over here to KOB.
Well, and my hope is in a community where the criminal justice system is functioning the way that it should, and the kind of crime dynamics hopefully subside, you'll see less and less of the district attorney. You should be in a community that's doing very well. You should not see the district attorney quite as much as you probably did with me. And so my hope for my successor, and frankly my hope for the community, is that we can solve this crime crisis and really start focusing long-term on the things that we need to do to move this state forward.
Would you say that's part of your goals as Attorney General?
Absolutely, and one of the things that I've really focused on in these first few weeks is a concerted effort to draw attention to vulnerable children who are, in desperate need of help, people that have disabilities, children with disabilities, children who are the victims of abuse and neglect. What I have always said, and I was frequently asked as district attorney, what was the driving force, what was the driving dynamic between our crime and public safety issues, and people would say, well, it's drugs or it's the availability of guns. And what I actually tried to draw their attention to was the crisis that we have in terms of early childhood trauma, adverse childhood experiences. We are at the very bottom of protecting children in terms of, when they need our help the most. Do they have a stable home environment, and do they have systems in place and institutions in place that are properly staffed to make sure that they're fully cared for? And my perspective now allows me to look at the same problem with a longer lens and think about making sure we have generational change so that we can have a more healthy, a more economically vibrant, and a more dynamic community. That all starts with kids, and that's why we've made that our focus in this first session.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Yeah. And coming up after the break, we are going to dive into one of those goals and the first high-profile lawsuit filed under AG Torrez. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye on New Mexico. This week we are sitting down with the newly elected Attorney General, Raúl Torrez. And on Monday he made a pretty big announcement. He has filed his first lawsuit against 4 local governments over their anti-abortion ordinances. And the cities and counties that he is suing say they aren't backing down.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is not Texas. In this state, a woman's right to choose is guaranteed by the New Mexico Constitution.
The Attorney General's lawsuit is filed against Roosevelt and Lee counties, as well as the city of Hobbs and Clovis, for ordinances passed in the last few months targeting abortion clinics.
And by a vote of 7 in favor and 1 abstention, the motion is carried.
But Torrez says these bills should have never been proposed.
Simply put, local communities are not empowered to regulate medical services.
With the future of these ordinances in the hands of the state Supreme Court, multiple pro-life organizations are coming to the defense of these local governments.
New Mexico is a very pro-life state. Communities have the right to say, we don't want that here. We don't want that in our backyard. And so we're standing with them.
Right to Life Executive Director Ethel Marhog says a Texas lawyer has offered to help.
But Texas understands what they've done when they passed their bills, and they're helping us. Because Attorney Jonathan Mitchell, he's a very well-accomplished attorney from Texas, and he's offered to represent the counties, the cities, and their taxpayers at no cost.
But with the roundhouse now in session and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham calling for Roe v. Wade to be codified in the state constitution, critics are asking, is this lawsuit jumping the gun? But Torrez says he's not holding his breath to see if that legislation passes.
And while I would like to see this statute passed, because I certainly think it would reinforce the position that we've taken today, I have a separate legal obligation to make an argument before the New Mexico Supreme Court that provides for an independent avenue for guaranteeing these rights.
All right, so once again, we are joined by newly elected Attorney General Torrez. So this is your first major case that you are filing. What helped you decide to make this kind of the first announcement out of the gate?
Well, I think, frankly, there's a lot of confusion, not just in New Mexico, but across the country, in the wake of the United States Supreme Court decision in Dobbs, which reversed the constitutional guarantee that was recognized at the federal level. And what that did is really create a legal environment where there's a lot of uncertainty. I think it's unfortunate that these communities have been misled, frankly, by this flawed legal interpretation. They simply just don't have the right, the constitutional right as municipalities and local governments to regulate access to health care, any kind of health care. But beyond that, you listen to some of the arguments made in opposition. They're going to bring a lawyer over from Texas. I'm more than happy to help the lawyer from Texas understand what the law is in New Mexico. This is a state that has strong equal rights protections that are above and beyond what's been recognized at the federal level. We have expansive due process protections, and the bottom line is we have greater guarantees for privacy, equality, and a core constitutional recognition of the right of a woman to control her body, to control what is one of the most consequential decisions she will ever have to make in her life. And my belief is, and I think most New Mexicans believe, that's a decision that she should make with her physician, her faith leader, her faith advisor, friends, family, whoever she wants to involve in that decision. That's her right. But it's not something that's subject to any local government. And the other thing that I would say, again, is this idea, and they started in Texas, that we will empower one group of citizens to sue another group of citizens to deprive them of their constitutional rights. That's not something that we have ever done in this state. So I really actually look forward to the opportunity to present this case to the New Mexico Supreme Court. I know this is something that is an outstanding question for these communities clearly, and I hope to get some clarity on that so that everyone and every woman in this state can clearly understand that that constitutional right is guaranteed under New Mexico law and will be protected by my office.
So when you filed this lawsuit, you filed it as an emergency writ. Is that correct?
That's
and so
right.
Why file it in that way, and what kind of makes this case so unique that it has to be filed as an emergency?
So there are a couple of elements. Number one, we can't have a patchwork of regulation that impacts a fundamental right. Number two, this is not something that there's a factual dispute, meaning we don't need a district court to take testimony. We don't need to gather, discovery and take depositions to come up with some factual evaluation. We're making a purely legal determination. And number three, this is a matter of profound public importance, obviously. This is a question that has moral gravity and real constitutional weight. It belongs in the hands of the New Mexico Supreme Court. That's where it should be decided. And my hope is that they'll recognize that this is an opportunity not only to clarify the limitations on local authority in terms of regulating this kind of conduct, but more importantly, to once and for all settle the constitutional question for all New Mexicans about what is protected under our Constitution. You talked a little bit about the legislature. I hope they pass this ordinance or a piece of legislation, a statute that would codify the holding in Roe versus Wade. even that would be subject potentially to a challenge. But a constitutional finding by the state's highest court would settle the question once and for all. And I think we deserve that, so we can resolve this and move forward.
I'm glad you brought up the legislation, because there were those questions in that press conference of, are you jumping the gun? Is this too soon? Because that legislation is being proposed, moving through the roundhouse. So I guess, what comes first in this situation, the chicken or the egg, the Supreme Court decision or the legislation? What would add the most, I guess, support to your argument?
Well, first and foremost, if the New Mexico Supreme Court takes up the constitutional question and resolves it, the matter is settled. That's it. That's the law. Number two, as somebody who's been through the legislative process a few times myself, I recognize that outcome is uncertain. And while I appreciate the effort that they're making, and I support the effort that they're making, I have a separate constitutional obligation to identify and represent the state and its citizens whenever there is a moment of profound public importance and a question of the basic and most fundamental constitutional guarantees. So these are on separate tracks, and they will have a separate forum for resolution. If we are able to have this case heard and decided conclusively in our favor, that will settle the question. I'm not sure that the passage of legislation would definitively settle that question. It may, in fact, be subject to its own challenge. And so this is a way to get to conclusion just as fast as we can.
Well, we'll definitely be following this story as it moves in front of the Supreme Court. And so coming up after the break, we're going to be talking more about the legislative session up at the Roundhouse, what AG Torrez wants to see done during this session. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye on New Mexico. This week we are talking to Attorney General Raúl Torrez, who has been pretty busy in his new role, especially with the legislative session in full swing. He took a break from the Roundhouse to join us here at KOB4. Well, thank you for coming down here today. So let's talk about what you are expecting to see come out of the legislature this session.
Well, my hope and frankly my top priority is to begin to create the first dedicated civil rights division within the Attorney General's office. As a former federal prosecutor, I can tell you that the crown jewel of the Justice Department is its Civil Rights Division. There are states all over this country that have quite active litigation divisions that are dedicated to protecting vulnerable groups. And of particular interest to me is how we can do more to protect children. I have proposed the creation of a Bureau of Children's Justice that would focus on children in foster care, children in educational environments that aren't meeting their needs, children who may be subject to disproportionate discipline in certain contexts, children with disabilities that need access to additional resources and support. The bottom line is we have to start doing more to protect the most vulnerable members of our community. That's not the only thing, however. I put forward a proposal for a dedicated fire recovery unit within our office for the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak fire. We're hoping to get additional funding for a crime gun intelligence center, which would enable us to go out to crime scenes across the entire state, gather casings that have been left behind in connection with gun violence, and then use new technology with the ATF to make comparisons to try to generate new leads. The recent shootings here involving elected officials in Albuquerque was actually solved in part by using this technology. But sadly, it's only available in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. It's not available statewide. As a statewide elected official, I have an obligation to try and bring those resources across the entire state. We're doing work on missing and murdered Indigenous women. We're doing work on organized retail crime. And of course, we are going to continue to do everything we can to try and protect consumers and protect the environment. So we've got bills and initiatives that are focused on all of those areas. Most of those have been presented earlier this week in a budget presentation, which would dramatically change the size and scope and footprint of the agency. But I think the members of the legislature have been very receptive about creating an Attorney General's office, which is truly a Department of Justice, which is focused on expansive protections for people that right now don't have the kinds of representation that they need, but they're entitled to.
Gotcha. You touched on a few bills. I know earlier this week on Tuesday, we saw you testify in front of a House committee for what is commonly known as the Benny Hargrove Act, an act specified to creating gun safety laws, how parents are supposed to secure their guns. What are some other bills that you are specifically tracking in the state that you hope pass at the end of the session, or even before?
So we are working with Representative Marion Matthews on a bill that would create a new framework for dealing with organized retail crime. We have a number of groups that are working systematically to target big box retailers and retailers across the state. It's a huge problem. So we're working on that. We're focused on that. We're supporting efforts once again to try and deal with the problems that have been apparent in pretrial detention and release. I've met with Senator Cervantes and talked to him about my concerns about the Arnold tool, and we'll be participating in a discussion that he has planned on that topic. And so we are participating in a variety of different measures, but right now that focus again is really on building out the litigation capacity of the office so that we can better protect people. Just earlier today, or actually yesterday, the Department of Justice filed an antitrust case against Google. That case was joined by 8 attorneys general from across this country. Here's the thing. Those states have thriving antitrust divisions. We don't have that. So that's an example of something that citizens in other states are currently protected by the Attorney General's office in those jurisdictions that have been more adequately staffed and properly resourced from a statutory perspective. That's the kind of protection that I think New Mexicans want and deserve, and that's what I'll be working for.
So could we have joined that lawsuit even if we wanted to without that office?
Well, we will certainly, and I actually, when I was reading about the states that had joined the litigation, I immediately contacted my leadership team and said, well, what is the status of this? But I can tell you right now, we don't have a dedicated antitrust unit. We need one. We don't have a dedicated unit focused on civil rights. We need one. We don't have a dedicated water attorney. I mean, believe it or not, we're dealing with probably one of the most consequential pieces of litigation for the future of this state in Texas versus New Mexico, and we are relying on outside counsel rather than having in-house natural resources attorney, dedicated water attorneys. Fights over water, disputes over water are going to define the future of Western states for the foreseeable future. And those are just a few of the examples of the kinds of institutional changes that we need to be focused on if we're going to serve people not just today, but for generations to come.
Definitely. And so on the flip side of that, are there any bills that you're aware of that are going through the legislative process right now that you really hope don't pass?
No, I mean, I haven't been focused right now on things that we have an objection to. I sit in a position where we get referrals for legislative analysis, and I'm sure members of our team will be focused on and will highlight problems that we have either with components of a particular bill or a bill in its entirety. But at this point, I'm trying to focus on the things that I know will have a positive impact for our citizens, things that have been proven in other states that just have never been tried here before, and seeing if we can just do more to enable us and enable me, frankly, to more effectively be the people's lawyer.
Gotcha. Now, earlier this week we heard the state of the judiciary from the Chief Supreme Court Justice, and she really asked for more money and funding for our law enforcement and for AG's office, for other factors of the judiciary branch of our state. Is there anything that you are specifically asking for from the legislative session?
Well, we've asked for an expansion in terms of the budget that's made available for the agency, a number of specialized programs, including this Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which I think will have a real impact for frontline police officers and prosecutors. And a broad re-examination of both the statutory tools and the resources that I think we need to positively impact the lives of the people in our state.
Perfect. Well, thank you for stopping by and breaking all of that down for us. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Eye on New Mexico. Remember, we'll be back next weekend with an all-new episode.